is your stance on charter schools, and why do you think people are having just a hard time understanding charter schools in North Carolina?
Yeah, I think that is clearly the most complicated issue that we deal with. And in this race, I think I am the only Democrat who has not come out as opposed to charter schools. I wouldn't necessarily say that I've come out as an advocate for charter schools. I think I kind of fall right in the middle there. I think the reality is I'm not going to make false promises. I'm not going to advocate for things that you can't do in the office. Charter schools have been around for a long time in North Carolina. We have 100,000 children in charter schools in this state. I refuse to demonize parents who choose to send their kids to a charter school or a private school for that matter, or homeschool. That's not my place to tell parents what they should do with their own children. So, my children attended traditional public school, but that's neither here nor there in this race. I think we need to have a real conversation about, as a state, how do we want to move forward? And so what I've suggested is that there have been questions about transparency, accountability, segregation, and so how do we deal with those issues in a real way? To claim that one is going to eliminate charter schools in the state is not only disingenuous, but it's not real. That's not a real policy solution. That's not going to happen. And so we need to be mindful about the kind of proposals we put forward. So some of the things that I've talked about to help increase kind of transparency, accountability, and some of these other pieces are some advocating for some policy change, some legislative change. So that includes things like direct funding of charter schools. So you may or may not realize that charter schools get the state allocation, but then they also get a county allocation. But their county allocation actually runs through the local schools district. And so what happens is we set up this animosity between the traditional public school and the charter school, because every month the public school is writing a check over the charter. And so I think one of those fixes is to have county commissioners writing those checks directly. Don't funnel that money through anymore. This adds another layer of accountability, because as a taxpayer you can say, why are my taxpayers going to X, Y, or Z charter school if they are not meeting whatever their legislative requirement is? So that adds a whole nother layer of accountability for them. I think that's an important move that needs to happen. If we're worried about segregation in certain areas where that is absolutely an issue, then we need to look at instituting at least weighted lotteries. So I think that's another piece. If I were elected, if I am elected, one of the things I'm going to look to do right away is have an impact study conducted. And so I think we can take a good hard look at which ones are performing really well, which are underperforming, and then how do we move forward based on that data that we collect. So I think we need the impact study. I'd like to see weighted lotteries. I'd like to see some direct funding. I think we have an opportunity also to think about renewals. And so for those that are struggling, perhaps we need to move to 3-year renewals rather than 5-year renewals, so we can have real policy change that we put in place that can lend itself towards this idea of increased accountability and transparency. But to suggest that they're going away, I think, is an impossibility.